Thank you. This is Bernie Caffarelli from the American Athletic Conference. Thank you for joining us today for today's teleconference with American Athletic Conference Commissioner Mike Oresco and ESPN Executive Vice President of Programming and Scheduling, Burke Magnus. I'm just going to run through what the format today will be. We'll have initial opening remarks from both Mike Oresco first and then Burke. We will take questions from all of you, and the operator will control those. All you have to do is press *1 on your phones. Audio from today's teleconference as well as a transcript will be available on the American Athletic Conference website. And if any of you are interested in one-on-one opportunities with Commissioner Oresco, please email me. I already have several emails in my inbox, and I will get to them as soon as I get off the call. So with that said, we'll take some opening remarks from Mike and then Burke Magnus.
Thank you, Bernie. I first want to thank Jimmy Pitaro, President of ESPN, and Burke Magnus, ESPN's Executive Vice President of Programming Scheduling, as you've just heard Bernie describe him, and his team of Nick Dawson and Pete Durzis for their outstanding work in this negotiation and for their support of our conference. This is one of the best negotiations I've been involved in, and I've been involved in quite a few during my career. I also want to recognize and thank our conference leadership, the chair of our board, President Renu Couture of the University of Houston, our vice chair, David Rudd, president of the University of Memphis, and Gerald Turner, president of SMU, who chaired our ad hoc media committee. All have offered valuable counsel and support, as have our athletic director chair, Tom Bowen of Memphis, and vice chair, Troy Dannon of Tulane University. Our presidents and athletic directors have enthusiastically supported this agreement and the vision it represents for the conference. I want to recognize and thank my staff for their hard and diligent work on this landmark agreement. In particular, our Chief Operating Officer, Donna DeMarco, and our Chief Financial Officer, Eric Ziotti, with special kudos to Senior Associate Commissioner Tom O'Jackson, and the people at ESPN know Tom well, who work closely with me on the strategy and details of this complex negotiation. No one knows the TV media landscape, programming, and scheduling better than Tom. Also providing valued insight and assistance were our media consultants, Ed Desser and John Kozner. And finally, I want to thank our outside counsel, Peter Zern, for doing his usual quality work on our behalf. This is an historic day for the conference. We could not be happier to be extending our relationship with ESPN, a great media partner whose platforms over the past 6 years have provided us with the ability to build a nationally respected brand. We will have increased exposure on ESPN's priority platforms, which include ABC, ESPN, ESPN2, and ESPNU, and we will be featured on ESPN+, ESPN's fast-growing and innovative digital platform. We are excited to have ESPN Plus as a key component of this agreement, one that complements our presence on the priority ESPN platforms. ESPN Plus is the cutting-edge future. It's exceptionally reasonably priced. It's easy to access and use. It's fast-growing, and it is available everywhere. Our Olympic sports and women's basketball will especially benefit from the ESPN Plus exposure. With the unmatched promotional clout of Disney and with its aggressive content acquisitions, ESPN Plus will be a major presence in the digital age, and being a branded part of ESPN Plus will be like having our own conference network, and more of our sports will now be available to more of our fans than ever before. I applaud ESPN for what they're doing in this area. This agreement positions us well in the changing media landscape and moves us closer to our Power Six goal. And channeling the late, great John Hausman, I would add that we are moving toward a Power Six designation the old-fashioned way. We are earning it. Despite the obstacles we have faced, our institutional leadership has never wavered in its commitment to regain our former position as a Power Six conference. Although we do not release financial information, this agreement provides financial security and additional resources for our member schools who have competed incredibly effectively even with limited resources. You have seen our competitiveness throughout the 6-year existence of our conference, and especially in our recent football seasons and in this year's NCAA men's and women's basketball tournaments. The credit for the developments that led to this agreement goes to our administrators, staffs, and coaches, but most of all to our student athletes, whose competitive spirit and drive made possible what many thought impossible. We are delighted to be moving into a very bright future with ESPN. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And now we'll hear from Burke Magnus. Burke?
Thank you, Bernie, and thank you very much, Mike, for your kind words. My first thank you is to Mike specifically. You have been a tireless and passionate advocate on behalf of the American and all of your member institutions, and quite frankly, without your drive and your dedication, and the results that your institutions have seen on courts and fields, subscribing to your vision for a Power Six world, that none of this would have been possible. So Mike deserves an unbelievable amount of credit here, and frankly, it was one of those great circumstances where his vision and our vision came together in a very seamless and ultimately, I think, a very beneficial way for both sides. I'd like to thank Mike's key presidents. He mentioned them: President Couture and President Turner, Tom Bowen, Troy Dannon. Obviously, all the trust that these people and all of the American member institution leadership, both at the university level and the athletic department level, have placed in our company is very encouraging to us. Like I said, it's definitely a case of our respective visions coming together at the perfect time. We are incredibly excited at several components of this agreement. Most notably, it's a long-term agreement that secures this content on the Disney platforms for 12 years. It extends a pre-existing relationship that dates back to 2013 with the very formation of the American Athletic Conference. It is comprehensive in nature and takes advantage of Disney's unmatched array of distribution outlets and platforms across the board. It has an emphasis on football and basketball, obviously, but now for the first time brings together an unbelievable array of what we refer to as Olympic sports. The depth and breadth of the content distribution here will benefit all the institutions, all of their sports, all of their student athletes. I think this crowd knows how seriously we take women's sports in particular, and this will be groundbreaking in terms of the exposure provided to women student athletes at the American institutions. And lastly, for us, it has a component related to ESPN Plus that is going to be an unbelievably great addition to the already powerful array of content that we've acquired for ESPN Plus, as we add a formidable direct-to-consumer sports product to the array of our distribution capabilities. Like so many businesses before, college sports is a huge component of ESPN Plus's offering, and to have a comprehensive deal with a conference like the American for ESPN Plus will be incredible to contribute to its already rapid growth. So I'm sure there's a lot of questions, but I did want to thank everyone on Mike's side of the table for their dedication to getting this agreement in place. And then I'd also like to thank my team, in particular Pete Durzis and Nick Dawson, for really bringing this agreement to fruition. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Burke. As a reminder, if you have a question, please press *1. We'll go to questions now.
Thank you. The question and answer session will be conducted electronically. To ask a question, please press *1 on your telephone keypad. If you're on a speakerphone, please make sure your mute function is turned off to allow the signal to reach our equipment. Again, that's star 1 to ask a question. We'll pause for a moment to assemble the queue. Our first question will come from Ralph Russo with the Associated Press.
Good afternoon, everyone. I actually have two questions, and they're not related, so if you can indulge me. The first one, and you both trumpeted the ESPN Plus side of this thing as a great bonanza for both sides, though I am wondering if that element, and I guess this would maybe be more directed to Mike, but Burke, please chime in too, if the American would have been able to earn as much if it did not agree to have more content put on the ESPN Plus platform.
Well, again, I really, Ralph, can't comment on that. I mean, this again, and I wouldn't comment on any ESPN internal, deliberations. All I know is that ESPN Plus is very important to ESPN and very important to us. And I applaud Burke for the manner in which, ESPN has not only rolled it out, but explained it and talked about it. And, as far as we're concerned, Ralph, ESPN Plus is the future. The direct-to-consumer, as Burke said. And it's an innovative digital platform that you want to be on. And, in fact, we still have more coverage on the priority networks of ESPN than we had before, which is terrific for this conference. But the fact is, there are going to be more sports offered on ESPN Plus than ever before. It's as though we have our own branded network, on that platform. So again, it was obviously an important part of the deal, but I am not going to speak to what portion of it was. I really couldn't. That's not for me to say.
Ralph, I guess I would just add.
Sure.
This deal is if you go back and look at the constituent parts of the 2013 deal, this deal is a much different deal. It's much more comprehensive. There's a lot more events that are included. ESPN Plus was a key component to driving value without question. But frankly, the thing we're most excited about is that new platform allows us to consider doing a deal that quite literally acquires every athletic event that the conference stages. Without it, it wouldn't. We couldn't do a comprehensive deal like this. So it's important in a couple of ways, but it certainly helped drive the overall value conversation.
And if I could just come in with something that's a little more granular and has to do with Uconn women's basketball, which has had its own sort of separate platforms, local distribution in the past, that has been obviously a big deal for folks in Connecticut. I'm wondering if there are any plans to, I know I'm using the wrong term here, but to farm out some of those games so they are available through more traditional platforms in the state of Connecticut. SNY, in the past PBS, things along those lines.
Yeah, I'll take that one. Well, obviously, I think as the group on the phone understands, we still have an entire year, the 1920 season, under the terms of the prior agreement, which gives us plenty of time, to have conversations and have meetings, with all interested parties about this content, and that's what we intend to do. In the case of SNY specifically, or CBS Sports Network, which sublicensed some content to us under the terms of the prior agreement, I'm certain we'll sit down with both of those guys and see where they are in terms of their interest in continuing those kinds of relationships. And we have the time to do it. So that would be our intention.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Chris Vanini with The Athletic. Please go ahead.
Hi, Mike. First off, the press conference noted that there were going to be 40 football games on various ESPN television platforms, which was an increase. I was just curious if you had to happen to know what the current numbers are.
Current, yes. Hi, Chris. The current is 26. 26.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's a minimum.
Okay.
And
secondly, right. And secondly, 12 years is a very long time for the deal. Other conferences have recently gone to some shorter ones with various changing media platforms. Why did you feel that 12 years was the right length and to go so long?
First of all, we appreciated the confidence ESPN showed in us. Burke, who obviously was the point person in this deal, and we appreciate the confidence they showed in us. But a long-term deal affords both sides a great degree of security. And by the way, most of the deals among our peer conferences were long-term. There might be a few that were shorter, but most were longer-term. And in our view, as you go out further, if we're successful, we obviously can sit down with ESPN and even talk about extending and redoing some things down the road. The point is, it gives you a lot of flexibility, but it also gives you security. We are very happy. We have a deal that we felt was very fair, and it gives again our schools a chance now to build their brands and to grow. You're not sitting there worried about negotiating another deal in a short period of time. And when you get the kind of exposure we're getting and the kind of overall opportunity to build this conference, and we've elevated it, and we're going to elevate it further. Doing a longer-term deal made a lot of sense. And again, I can't speak for ESPN. I would leave that to Burke, but I believe they feel comfortable too doing a long-term deal with us. It just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, longer terms have been typical of major college conferences. I think everything we've done has been 8, 10, 12, 15, sometimes longer, including SEC, ACC, Big 12, Pac-12.
Okay, and kind of a follow-up on that. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was saying I was involved in a 15-year deal at CBS. So, again, these deals typically have been longer term.
Okay. And a follow-up for Burke, a lot of these deals have been going to ESPN+. Is this part of any sort of plan to kind of phase out what is currently Watch ESPN that comes with cable packages?
Watch ESPN, the app? Is that what you're saying?
Right. Like a lot of these games right now, people can currently get for free if they have a cable package.
Yeah, well, Watch ESPN is in the process of being being incorporated into the ESPN app, which is our authenticated streaming level layer. So, the app going forward will be three things. It is right now. It's an array of free content, highlights, short-form highlights, information, statistics, and so forth. It's the authenticated content from our linear networks tied to your cable or satellite telco subscription, and it's ESPN Plus, which offers more content for direct-to-consumer for an additional subscription.
Okay, thank you.
Our next question will come from Matt Murchell with Orlando Sentinel.
Yeah, hi. This question is for Burke. Burke, I wanted to ask, how much impact, if any, did the play on the field with teams like UCF and what they've been able to do brand-wise, how much of that kind of impacted the terms of this deal with the American?
I think in a really significant way. Like I said at the top, Mike has been a great cheerleader and advocate for his institutions, but that only takes you so far. The schools have to back it up on the field, and I think they have. UCF obviously in football and men's basketball for that matter. Houston in basketball this year. The quality from top to bottom has been very strong, and it's been sustained over multiple seasons. So that's really what we looked for in the last deal was, could these schools live into the the premise that Mike and team were espousing in terms of their proximity to the Power Five, if you will, and I think unquestionably they've done that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Our next question will come from David Barron with the Houston Chronicle.
Burke, what have been the demographics regarding ESPN Plus signups? Are they among primarily younger users? Do you have a widespread in terms of people that are adapting to this new technology? And at what point, to what percentage of ESPN Plus content do you think the college sports will be taking up over the next couple of years?
Hey, David. I don't believe we've released any demographic information, but obviously I think it stands to reason that the subscribers in this environment tend to be younger rather than older. And what we have released so far is our overall number, which Bob Iger did at the most recent Disney earnings call, that we have passed within 10 months. We had passed over 2 million paid subscribers on ESPN Plus, and that will continue to grow, obviously, and we're encouraged by those early results. College sports, like I said, will, I think, be a big part of it. I think it provides the opportunity for conferences of all shapes and sizes to have really deep, branded, comprehensive environments in that product where their fans can have accessible and affordable access to high quality content in a comprehensive way, and well beyond just football and basketball, which tend to be or have tended to be the bell cows, if you will, for linear television.
Mike, you've negotiated these deals from the other side of the table. What are the new elements now that have to be taken into account when you're negotiating these deals that weren't in place when you were doing them for CBS?
Well, David, the deals are more complex now, and in terms of allocating, your programming, and in terms of determining how you're going to get your product exposed, it's more complex. But here's one of the factors, David, and this is a credit to Burke and ESPN. We know them; they know us. We were very comfortable, dealing with ESPN. We know how they schedule. We know how they know how we schedule. We have a long relationship. We understand the nuances of this, and it's one-stop shopping as well, with a company that can offer you so many different things and so much promotional support. I think the biggest issue here was obviously determining, what we would do on the primary networks, how we would, structure the deal vis-a-vis ESPN Plus. Obviously the length is an issue as well, and how we would schedule. Would we continue to do our Thursday, Friday, very successful Thursday, Friday series? There were some other things that we're thinking about doing that we can't discuss now, but around scheduling. All of that, is very complex. And again, that's why having someone like Tom O'Jackson with me is extremely, valuable. And he has worked with the ESPN, people, whether it's Nick Dawson, whether it's Pete Durzis, Burke's team. We've done a lot of this, and we've seen where we can generate interest and ratings. So, again, I think from my days, the deals have just become more complex. But there's one other thing I would say. The world has changed, and it really gave this conference an opportunity. And what I'm most pleased about is I think ESPN, and again, Burke leading the way, recognize that and recognize the potential that's still there in this conference. We've accomplished a great deal. We've had, more games than I can count that have had, 2 million viewers, 1 million viewers, football games, basketball doing well. But we've just scratched the surface. This conference has tremendous, range. We have 2.7 million alumni, 350,000 plus students, some of the bigger universities in the country. millions of fans. And the question was going to be, okay, how do we satisfy the demand for our product? How do we increase the demand for our product? And I think this deal is comprehensive, and I think it's going to do that. For instance, the ESPN Plus will give, again, our Olympic sports, baseball, soccer, rowing, golf, track and field, cross country, swimming and diving, tennis. It'll give those sports, a feature status that they never had. In addition, we have the ability now to televise, all of our women's basketball. A lot of those women's games were on, platforms that were very localized. So again, this has given us an opportunity in a very complex deal to really, really get our brand out there and allow people to enjoy the competitiveness of our sports.
And one more, if I may. Did you get to the point where you entertained other offers, or did ESPN and you come to the agreement during ESPN's exclusive window?
David, we have really enjoyed our ESPN relationship, period. It's been a terrific relationship. We wanted to extend it, and we're very happy that we worked together with Burke from the very beginning. And as I said earlier, his confidence in us was critical. Burke is the key acquisitions person at ESPN, and Jimmy Pitaro was incredibly supportive from the very beginning as well. And we saw no reason not to want to extend, with ESPN if we could get the kind of deal that made sense for both of us, and we were able to. And it's as simple as that. It was something that we wanted to do, and we had every reason to do.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Our next question will come from Jeff Calkins with the Daily Memphian.
Yeah, two questions. One very quickly for either of you. Is there any kind of opt-out before the 12-year window? But the second question is, in Memphis, the average fan would like to know, is there any way to know what percentage of, say, Memphis football and basketball games will be on the Priority Network? That's the kind of sort of basic question that they're interested in, as opposed to ESPN Plus. So can you give any concept of that, or would that be determined based on how the year is going for that particular team? Just some sense of that, please.
Yeah, I think I'll let Burke answer that.
Yeah, I would say on the scheduling piece, I think it'll work, in football and basketball generally the way it's always worked, which is, we tend to focus on, on teams that are relevant to the national championship CFP picture and bowl picture on the primary networks. And then there will be, appearances, guidelines and that kind of thing that will be at play. But typically it will work the way it always works, which is we'll tend to focus on the most relevant competitions on the primary networks between the teams that are performing at the highest level.
Would that be? Let's take UCF though, for example. If you're down there in Orlando, is there any way to predict? Does that mean that 3/4 of a team's games are going to be on the Priority?
There's no way to.
There's no way.
No, it doesn't work. It won't work that way. Unfortunately, there's no predictive, mechanism you can apply to how many or anything like that.
Okay. And is there any kind of opt-out before the 12 years?
No, but we don't have the kind of relationship with the American that requires any kind of opt-out. We have constant and ongoing conversations, on a daily basis. That's my job, and my team's job is to make sure that the relationship is such that we're always talking, and whether that's about complicated issues or whether that's about exciting opportunities, we'll always be in concert with each other relative to adjustments, along the way.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Bill Wagner with the Baltimore Sun Media Group.
Hi, for both Mike and Burke, and obviously this is specific to Navy. Notre Dame Navy, a very valuable entity always has been. The Navy home game in that series is now part of this contract. Can both of you speak to the value of that?
Well, again, I would, I certainly want Burke to comment, but my feeling is it's extremely valuable. It's a Notre Dame game, and it's Notre Dame against Navy, which is a long, storied rivalry. It's one of the longest in the country. They've been very competitive games, and especially over the last decade and a half. And they're played at interesting sites with full stadiums, and for us, it was important to have that be part of this deal for ESPN, for our partner. And we're excited. I know the first game is going to be in Ireland in 2020, and that should be a tremendous experience for everyone. And then I would, throw it to Burke if he has any comments on it.
No, everything consistent with Mike just said. I mean, we were excited that the Navy-controlled portion of that series is in this agreement now, and obviously it's a high caliber competition with and storied rivalry, like Mike said, that we found to be incredibly valuable to be in this package. We're excited to have it. We're excited. I think my travels, the farthest out my travel schedule is been determined, is that I'm quite certain I'll be at that game in Ireland.
And then also for both of you, you got one Navy. Navy has this separate deal with CBS Sports Network for all its home games. You're getting a per pick of one of those. Did you want more? I mean, why let Navy have whatever the remaining 5 or 6 home games it is? What did you push for more than just one home game, and if not, why do you feel just choice of one of the Navy home games to move over to ESPN from CBS Network is suffice?
Bill, we discussed this with ESPN, and Navy has unique scheduling requirements as a military academy. You're well aware of their homecomings, and they have to schedule games well in advance, and can only do home games at certain times of the day. And ESPN, as you know, is the major distributor of college football. So we looked at that, and it was a joint decision that there were certain things that ESPN probably wouldn't have been able to do, or certainly those games would potentially have been in the package. And
right.
The relationship that obviously Navy has with CBS Sports Network allows them a lot of flexibility, and so therefore that was why that deal was done. And ESPN, we work with them, and they're happy to have that home game, because they are able to schedule that one premier home game each year, and that's going to be great. And in addition, they get the Navy away games in our conference, and those there's much more scheduling flexibility with those games.
Yeah, between those two components, the road games, the one home game, and the Notre Dame game every other year, we thought that would be that would suffice in terms of access to Navy football. And like Mike said, just the unique requirements that they have as a service academy in terms of what they have to do with their home games. This was probably the best solution for both sides.
Thank you very much.
We'll go next to Pat Eaton-Robb with the Associated Press.
Hi, guys. I'm just wondering, ESPN Plus now I think is $5 a month for subscribers. Is there anything built into this contract or any assurances that of the cost to subscribers 5 years, 10 years down the road, protections against this becoming unaffordable for some people?
We wouldn't get into any pricing. I'll leave that to Burke. We wouldn't get into anything.
Yeah. No, it's the pricing of the product is, will be managed by us. Right now, it is $4.99 or $49.99 for an annual subscription, 20% discount off the monthly price, and we continue to. Our primary concern is continuing to add compelling content to the offering, which we've done fairly aggressively over the last year. The first anniversary of launch is April 12th, so we haven't been at it yet quite a year. But we're content focused at this point, not on the price per se.
Thank you.
And next we'll hear from Justin Williams with The Athletic.
Hi. Just curious if you have any comment on some of the financial figures related to this deal that were reported elsewhere, and any other financial information about the deals, whether it's overall or with specific schools that you'd wish to comment on.
I can't comment. We don't comment on any of the financials.
Same here.
Next, we'll go to Brandon Costa with Sports Video Group.
Hey, thanks very much, guys. This question is for both gentlemen, but I'll start with Mike. In what ways does this agreement impact the production of live events from a school perspective? Many of ESPN's new partnerships like the SEC, the ACC, even conferences like the Ivy League, they place a lot of the production efforts, especially for Olympic sports, on the schools themselves. Has there been any kind of a conference-wide decree sent out to the schools in terms of building up production facilities, expanding departments? How do you foresee that potentially playing out?
Well, knowing that we would likely have a large presence on ESPN Plus and we would have certain production requirements, we've been in close touch not only with ESPN but with independent consultants, and we're working on the necessary infrastructure. All our schools have bought in to that, and they know that they're going to have to build up infrastructure, and it's something that is ongoing. In addition, there are different ways we can handle the production, either through the conference or the school, but we will be required to produce events for ESPN Plus. But we're very confident that we'll be in good shape there. We've got obviously some lead time in this deal, and we've been for quite a while now. We've been in touch. And by the way, even before we started negotiating with ESPN, we had a sense, based on the changing world and where things were with ESPN and what we saw other conferences doing, that we would likely be involved in this. So we engaged, consultants, and we talked to ESPN about the right ones to talk to. And so we're well ahead of schedule on this, and we're very confident that we'll not only be in a position to produce events at a high quality and a good standard, but that we'll have the infrastructure in place well before we actually need to use it.
Okay, gotcha. And Burke, just as a follow-up with you, when you're striking collegiate conference deals like this, just how much of the conversation is centered around these kinds of efforts that you've taken, empowering the schools with technology, graphics packages, advice to kind of produce, especially the long tail of these live events?
Yeah, it's been a pretty successful partnership so far, in particular with the SEC. The institutions have appreciated, I think, the expertise that we bring to the table in terms of getting their institutions in a position to produce and distribute this content, and to get their institutions up to certain capabilities, and then to provide a real world practical experience for a lot of their students, and have some of their staff learn from people who are doing this full time for a living. So it's been a great partnership to date. I think that will be the case here as well. And the added benefit for both sides at the end of the day is you get thousands and thousands of events produced, and only a few years ago those numbers were considerably smaller. So it's been great exposure opportunities for Olympic sports, for women's sports, for really everything that happens on campus. Even things beyond sports have commencement ceremonies and other things have been the same infrastructure has been applied to produce and distribute that content on the institutional level. So it's really raised the bar for in circumstances where we've done this previously, and I think this will be no different.
Cool. And just a real quick clarification, I think you might have said this, Mike. So anything that's designated in the schedule, an ESPN Plus game, will be produced by the school, or it might not be as clean as all that?
No, we'll produce the events, and anything we do produce would be on ESPN Plus. We have obviously certain minimums that we have to produce, but if we do things beyond that, and we may, then it would be those events would be on ESPN Plus.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Our next question will come from Matt Buckler with the Journal-Inquirer of Manchester.
Yeah, a lot of Uconn fans, they watch ESPN, but they're not that familiar with Netflix, streaming services. I mean, I know I can get this channel on my laptop, but how much of a hassle is it to get it hooked up to my TV, and will ESPN be available in bars?
Are you talking about ESPN Plus in this case?
Yes, ESPN Plus. Yeah. If a Uconn game is on ESPN Plus and a bunch of us want to go to a watering hole to watch the game, will we be able to do that?
Yeah. So first thing on the first part of your question, ESPN Plus is available in the same way that Netflix is, for example. Now it's across every platform, every technology, every over-the-top device, whether those are Apple TVs or Roku's or Chromecast, etc. On your iPhone, on your computer, on your Android device. I mean, everywhere that you can get the ESPN app. Frankly, ESPN Plus is available on all of those devices and technologies. So it's pretty widely available. I mean, Netflix has 140 million subscribers worldwide, so there really isn't that high a bar in terms of people's understanding of how to access over-the-top streaming technologies at this point. Commercial establishments is a work in progress. Obviously there's a bunch of commercial establishments who get their video services through some of the platforms that I just mentioned, and if that's the case, then ESPN Plus would be there too. But it's not as ubiquitous as it today as it is in the home. So like I said, that will be a work in progress.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, we'll hear from Drew Hill with the Commercial Appeal.
Hey, this is for either of you guys. You mentioned the increase from 26 to 40 in football games on the three main networks. Will there be an increase in men's basketball as well?
There is an increase in terms of the priority networks. Yes, there is. It basically doubles in terms of the minimums. So there is, yes.
Do you have an idea of what the minimums were?
Yeah, they were around 32, and now we'll go to 65. So there's a significant, increase there. And again, those are, as Bert pointed out earlier, those are the premier games, and this is why this deal is very good for the conference, and we hope obviously very good for ESPN. Our premier product will have even more exposure on the priority networks, and we'll also have obviously the ability to have all these other events that were not really showcased at all before.
And one more, if you don't mind. Will schools endure the production costs for the ESPN Plus events?
We're still working on how we're going to deal with that. We'll figure it out internally, and that won't be something that we'll discuss publicly. All I can say is we'll produce these games at a good level. The production values will be very good.
Thank you.
We'll go next to Wayne Norman with Uconn Sports Network.
As this is for either one of you, and piggybacking a little bit on what Matt Buckler just said, practically all Uconn basketball and football games have been on either cable or broadcast television outlets forever. Do I understand this package to mean that a substantial number of those games will now be only accessible on computers and devices for a fee? And if so, approximately what percentage of Uconn basketball and football games do you think will be available only on those paid streaming services?
Hey, this is Burke. I think, as I answered with the gentleman from Memphis, I think it's really difficult to suggest on an annual basis which games will be where or what percentage of games will be where. But there will be some games on ESPN Plus, which is a streaming service which is available to everybody. So I hesitate to try and draw lines or attach numbers to that, but there will be some, yes.
And I would just say, though, there's still a significant number of games that are likely to be on priority networks. And an example, Uconn women's basketball, they will be getting as much coverage as probably many men's programs around the country, on linear. So again, there's priority networks, and so consequently, you really have to strike a balance, and it's a good balance because, again, we want to be part of a cutting-edge, digital platform. That's very important. We have to look to the future, and that's extremely important. And in addition, on the priority networks, we still have, significant coverage, and in many cases, better coverage than a lot of schools have. So again, I think that this conference can continue to build its reputation, its brand, with the kind of coverage we're getting, and we're very happy with it.
We'll go next to Chris Stade with NOLA.com.
Hi. This might just be a little bit of a matter of clarification, but Tulane University has a streaming option on their website for pretty much all home sporting events behind a paywall. Currently, all home baseball games are available through this. Under this new deal, will all baseball games appear on ESPN Plus? Is that part of the inventory? Just about everything that would be under, say, typically a school-controlled sort of pay-per-view type service that already exists at Tulane? Will that be shifting over to this platform?
Yes. Anything the school produces will be on ESPN Plus. Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to get a clarification on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Jeff Sharon with Black and Gold Banneret.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Burke. I apologize for having two quick questions, but one of them's a quick yes/no. Mike, you could probably clarify this first one. Is this an exclusive deal with Disney, or is the American not yet done yet in relation to its media properties? And also, regarding the Olympic sports, I know some part of this was mentioned before, but I just wanted to clarify. Have you, with the American, have you established any financial or content and production standards for the schools to follow with regard to Olympic sports production, since it's going to be in the hands of the schools for the most part? So for example, is there any sort of standards in terms of the number of cameras that are involved and things like that?
Well, first of all, this is an exclusive deal with ESPN with one, relatively small exception. We have a deal for a handful of select basketball games with CBS Sports, the broadcast network, and we will be engaging in talks with them, and that's been a deal that we've had in place for many, many years, going back even before the reestablishment of this conference. But other than that, this and aside from those Navy games, this is an exclusive deal with ESPN, and we're very happy about that. One of the great things about dealing with a company like ESPN, in addition, as I mentioned, the one-stop shopping, I as commissioner don't lose an ounce of sleep ever knowing that our games and our events are going to be on ESPN platforms. Because when the assignments go out each week, I know I'm just pleased that our membership enjoys the coverage and the exposure they get on ESPN. ESPN is the leader, and it will remain the leader, and we couldn't be happier about that. So consequently, we were very happy to do an exclusive deal. As far as the production standards, we're working with our schools. We will certainly work with them to establish a minimum level of quality. You want to make sure that these are quality productions. We're not necessarily going to dictate the number of cameras or that sort of thing, but we will make sure that there is a certain level of production that and our schools understand this. They understand that they will be required to, and they want to. They want to have their product displayed in a good way. So this is not going to be any kind of issue within the conference, believe me.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, for being on today's call. As I mentioned at the start of today's teleconference, if you are interested in speaking with Commissioner Orozco, please email me, and we'll get that set up for you. I know I do have some requests that I haven't responded to yet, and we'll get to those as soon as I can get back to my computer. And thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.